the microbiome refers to a collection of microorganisms in a particular environment. So when we talk about microbiome, we think we're just specifically talking about our gut, but actually microbiome exists everywhere. It exists in the soil, so you can have a soil microbiome. It exists in your skin, you can have a skin microbiome. So simply a microbiome is anywhere, any environment where there's a collection of microorganisms. What the microbiota is just that specific community of microorganisms. So usually you qualify the statement of microbiota of where it might be. So you say gut microbiota, that means the collection of those microorganisms in the gut. And that is not just mean bacteria, which is what some people may think. Actually, it also includes viruses, fungi, which are all very important aspects of the community as well. Well, there's been a massive amount of research interest, and we're learning so much more about the gut microbiota. It's probably one of the biggest developments in terms of what we've learned, how important it is, and how it affects our body. We have 3 billion bacteria in our gut and almost 4 million bacterial genes. So just to give you some idea of how, our whole body has about 23,000 genes. So it gives you an idea of how complex this ecosystem that exists between us and how we interact with it. We are understanding more and more how the bacteria in our gut metabolize the food that we eat, and the metabolites they produce have a huge effect on not just our gut in terms of inflammation in our gut. There's now studies to show that it can affect how we are from a psychological perspective in terms of depression, other immune-mediated diseases such as asthma, diabetes. So we're learning huge amounts about this very complex organ. I've alluded to before how complex the gut microbiota is, and we are just learning how we interact with it. There are billions of bacteria and billions interactions and chemical reactions that undergo in our body all the time. They're producing millions of metabolites. And what is difficult to say how we control it is because there's so much variation between an individual. So between us as individuals, we're all so different. You can imagine if there's 3 billion bacteria, no human gut is the same. So when we're trying to control it, say with these products that are available, such as probiotics and certain foodstuffs, it's actually difficult to say, to get a very desired outcome, because we all react differently to different things that can modulate the gut. So I think rather than saying we control the gut microbiota, we're learning, we know what affects it at the moment. For example, food, of course, we're learning how food affects our gut, our exercise, even stress, all these, the environment. We're learning how these things can affect the gut microbiota, but we're not quite in a position yet to be able to 100% control it. And that's what we're obviously striving for in terms of research, and that is an area that we're learning more and more about every day. We know that there is a lot of studies that have been done to show that over a number of years that people who have a diet more in saturated fats, high animal fats, an increased risk of cancer, as well as inflammatory disease. Eating fruits, vegetables, high fiber are all known to be protective for these things. So it's really knowing what we probably know already is that your fruit and veg, your 5 a day, is very important in your gut microbiota. It can give you a sort of anti-inflammatory effect, whilst foods rich in animal fat and sugars, saturated fat, are actually what we call pro-inflammatory, while fruit, fiber are anti-inflammatory. So these things are important. So a plant-based diet has shown to be quite protective. It's very interesting to show that actually a Mediterranean diet in elderly population was shown to reduce frailty and also to improve cognition. So Mediterranean diet, fruit, vegetables, everything, all these fresh things that don't come out of packet essentially, are important to maintain your gut microbiota. Other things to try and avoid are things like sweeteners, emulsifiers. So we have artificial sweeteners, for example, like Diet Coke, Coke Zero, these products are actually shown to not be good for you and can actually induce a more pro-inflammatory state in your gut. Medications such as antibiotics certainly affect our gut bacteria and can upset the balance. So certain bacteria can predispose to a bacteria called Clostridium difficile, where that sort of overtakes the whole bowel and can cause quite significant diarrhea and make people very unwell. And we know certain antibiotics can cause this, and we use those very judiciously to try and avoid that. There is some evidence to show that in children that using antibiotics too much can actually increase the risk of immune-mediated disease, such as inflammatory bowel disease and asthma. So it's important, certainly, in terms of antibiotic use, to be sure that you're using antibiotics correctly, because yes, it can affect our gut bacteria. So there was an interesting study looking at exercise. So in terms of gut microbiota, we know that increased diversity is a positive thing. It reduces your risk of pro-inflammatory responses. And exercise, as should be shown, when they looked at the gut microbiota of a rugby team, who are very physically active, as you might imagine, their gut microbiota was very diverse. So something like exercise actually increases your gut diversity. Food, of course, is the main thing, and we know that certain foods, as I've described, can reduce your diversity and be more pro-inflammatory, while some can be more anti-inflammatory. But even things in the environment, we're not sure how environmental pollutants. There's an area of study of how what we inhale can actually affect our gut microbiota, but that is an area of increased interest. The gut microbiota is very complex, and it's different between all of us. So that makes it difficult to make a specific test that will be able to define your gut microbiota and then to be able to manipulate it to get a desired result. So there is no commercial accurate test available. There are tests available, which you would be able to get over the internet, but they're actually limited in their scope, limited in their efficacy, and also limited in how you act upon those results. So this is very much still an area of increasing research, and there's no recommended test that is available that would be able to give you the information you need, that you'd be able to therefore go on to manipulate the gut microbiota. So in essence, we do not really test actually the gut microbiota because we do not have the current commercially available tools to be able to do it accurately, although there are tests out there.